Tucked away back in the woods is this cute little cottage. It looks like it's in a secret garden. We're going to learn all of this texture here. We're going to use our mixed paints, giving dimensions so that we can take this line drawing and make it come to life. Right, I've got a ton of colors mixed up over here, and I've got some of my examples here so that I can kind of see what I'm aiming for. I'm going to start with the roof. My example had more of a gray roof. I'm going to start with hopefully a little bit right in between brown and gray, and I'm just going to pop in these long strokes using my small tip, fine tip water brush. That way I can just get right to the edge of these lines here, leaving some of that white showing. We'll come back in and add more texture in a bit. And we've got the roof that peeks out behind the foliage down here as well, so we don't want to forget that. And this just starts to give us some kind of context as we begin this complicated motif. And so if you're following along, I'm going to move all over the painting, letting areas dry, adding more layers. So you can skip around on the video if you want. You can watch it once through and kind of see how I'm accomplishing that. And it could apply for the techniques can apply for any of your line drawings you might have. Or maybe you picked this up at my shop here in Charlotte, Matthews, or maybe you purchased online. So I'm glad to have you here. Subscribe on my YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram. That way you can tag me or message me with your finished product so that I can celebrate that and post. I've got a lot of green in this painting, so when I went to look at maybe doing sort of a turquoise, I felt like it was not as cohesive as I would like. So now I've got sort of this blue-green here. So I'm trying that out for the first time. I've done a couple of iterations of this. It's a newer one at the time of this recording, so I kind of work the kinks out and make sure that it's paintable and that I can paint it and the lines make sense, and that way, and then I want to try to make sure I can explain it as I'm painting, so I'm going to try my best to do that here, just kind of talking as I'm going. And I'm going to get in between some of these places in this chair so that we're seeing through that. My paint's kind of mixing. I had too much green in the other one, so we'll see how this turns out. See, it's already getting a little bit greener than I was hoping. Let's see. All right, well, and I'm going to go back over those areas there, so I'm not too worried that I went out of the lines. And I'm adding already a second layer. That way there's no texture happening here that I don't want. And this is the shutter open, and it's foreshortened because it's kind of sticking out like this instead of flat back. Okay. And I forgot this little area here. So I've kind of got some good start to being able to see what's what. We have all these lines. This is a very intricate motif, take and paint. This isn't necessarily more difficult, but it has so much detail. We want to really start defining our area so we can tell what's what with all of these lines. And you can use my reference on Tamery.com as well. Just kind of maybe add a few more layers. I believe in the photo, something I liked about it was this kind of like wood shingle roof is why that looks like that. And it just looks so cute. So I'm gonna kind of put that in there, and then I might just kind of add a little bit of just into that wet paint, just a little bit of green, like it's mossy, like that wood shingle would look. Kind of a dark green. Just to give it some kind of interest. And we'll get a little bit under here, not too much. And I'm going to come along one of the lines of the trunk here, meaning one of the sides, and get that defined, and then start finding a few of those branches. There were a lot of them, so I had to just kind of choose what I was going to sketch in here, what I was going to include and not include. To give that impression of these neat pine trees. And now I'm going to take a little bit of the water version of that and just kind of go along here, leaving those open so that it gives a texture like bark would a little bit. If I paint it solid, it just won't give that impression or hint of the dimension of bark. So these vines have grown on this little cottage over the years, and going to start, I don't know where, I think I just made up a new line there, which is perfectly fine. And because I have my shutter sort of color inside my vine, I'm just kind of going over this with a little bit of a darker brown just to make it make sense and pop that into a few other places to give an accent so they all look similar. I'm going to let that kind of dry up there, and I'm going to start working down here a little bit. I love this. We've got this kind of lavender down here, doing this kind of light green for now with this layer, and I'm adding some additional branches in here. I didn't want to draw them all out for you if you've got my take and paint. So we're just kind of filling that in as though there's a bunch of different branches. And we'll add the lavender in a minute. I want to keep those strong lines. If you've got a lot of paint there, you might want to wait till it dries and add some of those stronger lines on there with a different color of green. Just filling that in until I get the flowers in, as I'm not sure where everything goes. And this is all just greenery. There's no flowers in it. You can always add flowers by using a pencil to draw them. If you wanted to add color, you'd have to leave enough white space so that you're not trying to put the color on top of the green. It won't really work. And so you see, I'm just kind of popping in those lines, now popping in. Actually, I don't want it to be quite so jiggy. So my stroke, instead of dabbling at it, I want my stroke to kind of be a little more solid and left to right there. And now I've got to remember to get underneath these chairs, get in between the flowers here. I'm going to do this. I think it looks like it's kind of stone. And we've got these stones here, so I'm going to add a little black to that. And find the edges of these stones. They're very irregular. is great if you go outside of the lines because we'll never know that it wasn't planned. Now we can just kind of put like a stroke in there where it doesn't fill the whole stone. Put a little bit of like a shadow in my door, waiting for some of this to kind of dry. You can always just go in the end and do it, but you can find little things you can do while you're waiting. We'll do the windows later. If you want to make it mums and make it fall, then you would probably not use a light green here. Use a darker green, and you can pick those kind of colors. This is more springy. So we've got new growth, light green. And now I'm going to go in and do these little planter boxes with similar color. You don't have to do that. You can plan yours out how you want and kind of go in between what will be foliage. We'll paint that in a second. Reload mine. That's kind of dark, but I'm going to wait and see how I like that, if I want to tone it down or not, because it is kind of giving some contrast. Everything's sort of blending in together here. And then up here, it's kind of like the lights are off in the back here, so you can decide what you want to do about that. And right along here as well, because those will be curtains. You may want to put a little bit of dark here. I want to have some sort of light on in the background. So maybe a table lamp, so it's dark in the background with a little table lamp on. And the same thing with here. We can kind of add a little bit of that yellow, water that down, and put in. So it's kind of like cozy. If you want it to be in the afternoon, then you could make it kind of blue, like it's glass and reflecting, or a little blue-green, since it would show some of the forest. I want to do my curtains in a very light blue. I have that in one of my other cottage motifs. We're kind of pretending this is the cottage in our cottage core series that has the attic chair and the desk and the office and the path to get there. Okay, now I'll go in and do this lavender kind of thing. And I'm just going to tap those in. That just look like it would be a good shadow color for here. All right, this is starting to come together. Takes a lot of patience to watch this whole thing, but if you're really wanting to learn how to do this and you're not sure how, then this is helpful. It just takes a little bit of time to get the hang of it. Come along here. I have the stucco in the background, so there's so many different choices. I've done kind of a warm color. I've done more of a gray. This is a little bit more of a warm gray, kind of leaning more towards liking that. I'm going to get this down so we can go over the rest of our painting with this green. So I'm going kind of around where that green will be. And you could do this after you've already painted the green. Depends on if you feel like you can see the areas, because if you put green from the trees over, it'll change the color a little bit. And we can always add more in a minute after we've got our greens in here. Okay, I'm doing a little bit of a lighter as a background, just getting those. And if this is really wet behind here, then don't get started on this yet. But it'll help it kind of blend together if it's just thin like I did. Not, then wait. Okay, so I'm not filling in everything because I am going to go over it with a darker color. If you're ever doing like leaves or something like that in flowers, it is good if you kind of put a yellow in the background and then add another layer in over it, and that just kind of helps give leaves a dimension, like light is shining through it. That's kind of a trick in illusion and painting. You can get the picture, some description. I've got some other basic videos on just how to use your brush and how to mix the paint and things like that as resources there, and my YouTube channel. Those are all the hard things I was self-taught and watched online, and although I went to art school, I never learned watercolor, so I had to teach myself, and I just kind of empathetically try to make it as easy as possible because I felt like it was a real chore to try to get the supplies and follow along, especially if I didn't have the drawing. So that's why I create the drawing so that you don't have to. Okay, so you see what I did there. Kind of went back and forth between the greenery and this background, and now we're just going to kind of make some of the rest of this come to life through, if it's dry enough, kind of add a little bit of a different green in what you've already got. I call this dancing my brush. I'm going to try this like kind of muted pink. Go around the outside, leave some white. And they're in the foreground, so I want them to pop. And without getting the pink paint in there, I'm going to add those stems, some of these leaves. Just giving the hint of this in the foreground. And I'll pop some brighter straight sunset right in there just to kind of get that going. So that's a very hot pink. I'm kind of making up where these flowers might be. There's a few places you can see on this drawing where you know it's a flower. It's got a little dot in the center. And then some of it's just, I don't know. It's up to the artist to decide. So I'm going to do the same thing up here. And one of my examples that I'm looking at as a reference has a little bit of yellow in it too. So I'll decide if I want to do that. Let that dry while I green. Next up, we've got this little chair set up here, and I'm going to do kind of a pink pillow. the chairs are black, so I'm not going to do the one that I just painted. I'm just going to do this one. And you could make these like turquoise or something fun. Leave them white if you think they're painted white. It's your cottage. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm going to do the edge of this table in black. And I don't think I'm going to go blind here trying to look at this, that I can get all of it exactly right. But you get the idea. There's a little pattern there. Let me get these flowers here. And now I'm just kind of finding those areas where I've left the white of the paper and it doesn't make the drawing look like, I don't have to fill in all of the white, but I don't want it to look like it's unfinished. So I'm ready to move on to the trees up here, and I'm picking hopefully this kind of darker green, and I need to leave the white of the paper. Kind of looking at the example here, grabbing those edges, leaving some white in the middle, but making sure I'm leaving enough white in between so it just doesn't look like a gigantic mess. And probably no two drawings of mine are going to look the same because I'm literally just eyeballing it and hoping it works out okay. So like that's a space in between the branches. This looks like the foliage. And at the edge of the house, I wanted to go right up to that edge and out so it looks like it's behind. And then this one has to be green because the tree goes behind it. And you can wait till your stuff dries a little bit and start to kind of put that in between. And that fills up the gap so we don't have to sit here and try to draw every single branch in the woods. So it gives the impression that there's more foliage back behind there, but we're just with our eye viewing these ones that are closest to us and our adorable cottage. And then over here, we'll kind of fill that in, and probably be best to kind of do this first, but sort of put a little bit, it's almost like how I instruct people to do clouds. You just kind of already have the wet paper and leave a little bit of dark and light, white, just kind of fill that in, nondescript. This will all just go in the frame, kind of, some of it might still be white at the edge of your frame, but it's okay because it's a nice little fun loose drawing. And now I'm going to do kind of the same thing, very lightly go in here and sort of fill in without activating that purple, a little bit of that green. Kind of tap in, can even go over it with a clear brush. Get rid of some of those white lines. Very lightly activate some of that paint. And I'd like to paint my little teacup here. And a creamer. Ah, you know what we forgot? Put the green in here. Looks like a little bit of Fruity Pebbles, which is a lot of fun because that's really super in these days. I'm seeing all these weddings with kind of fun poppy bouquets, and color is coming back in, y'all. And I think I'll do the table a little bit gray, just a slight gray. So you can keep working on your trees. Once you sort of figure out what's what over here, you can add a couple of different layers to kind of give depth and dimension in both the foreground and the background. Even pulling that kind of turquoisey color just to give something else back here. And even if you just take something light and kind of go over scratchy with like my new word I made up, just to give it texture in the background. So it's kind of like, oh, stuff back there. So that can be it, and you can pop it in a frame, or you can do some shadow. So I'm going to start doing that now. You can bow out, especially if you know how to do this. But I'm going to just come in here and show you that putting a little bit of shadow. You don't have to use black. You can use complementary colors, but it's just for this sake. It's really going to work. Making my light come this way so everything is the same. Oh, we didn't even put in our little cracks. It's fine if you don't want to put them in paint. And then we've got these mullions and stuff, like just putting a little bit of a black line under here, defining the window, making sure that you're kind of making the window look like it's in front of the curtains. And then I need to match it up here. All right. I suggest if you're doing this, take a little break here and there. That's a lot to do in one sitting. I'll put a little bit of that gray sort of back in here. How about we just put it around a couple of stones here and there, especially as you get under those trees. So you can see how adding a little bit of shade and shadow really helps pop. So I hope you enjoyed doing this. Remember to tag me on Instagram.